Well, right now, an explosive new report about the impact of Obamacare is front and center on Capitol Hill. The analysis estimates that as a result of the Affordable Care Act, 2 million jobs could be lost over the next 3 years, 2.5 million over the decade. The head of the Congressional Budget Office telling Congress just this morning that Obamacare reduces the incentive for Americans to work.
The increase in the standard of living that those people would have by working or working more hours would be smaller than it would be otherwise. They would still have a higher standard of living by working in almost all cases, but the standard of living wouldn't be as much higher relative to what they would have if they didn't work or if they worked fewer hours. So by providing a somewhat smaller incentive to work, somewhat fewer people would work.
Joining us now, Doug Holtz-Eakin, a former CBO director and now president of the American Action Forum. So, Doug, everybody from the White House to, well, lots of other interested parties are trying to sell this as somehow a good thing. Here's something from the New York Times. The New York Times editorial board writes, freeing workers from the insurance trap. That's the headline. It says a new report found that by reducing the number of full-time workers over a decade, the health care law will have a liberating impact for millions. Can you see in any way that this is a good thing if 2 million fewer Americans are working in a few years?
I think there are three things to remember here. Number one, fewer Americans. The fraction of Americans working is lower now than it was before the recession. To further make that worse can't be a good idea. The second is this whole notion that somehow this is reducing job lock. Job lock used to be not going from one job to a better job because of your health insurance. This mistakes that with not working at all, and I think that's confusing terms. The most important thing is, at its heart, what the report is saying is that it costs an employer more to lure someone out of their home and into the workplace. Normally when we say we've made it too expensive to hire someone, we said we've killed that job, and so we're killing off 2.5 million jobs.
And I mean, the jobs, when you're losing 2.5 million jobs, you're losing all kinds of economic activity. I mean, American workers are already the most productive in the world. So if you take 2.5 million out of the workforce, that reduces productivity, doesn't it?
It reduces the size of the economic pie. Remember, those health insurance benefits aren't coming out of nowhere, so fewer people are working, paying the taxes that finance the Affordable Care Act. We're not going to get the same increase in the ability to service the debt that we're leaving behind to the next generation. This is not a good news story.
Yeah, and then there's this from page 111 of that Congressional Budget Office report. Talks about the number of people. It says, as a result of the ACA, between 6 million and 7 million fewer people will have employment-based insurance coverage each year from 2016 through 2024 than would be the case in the absence of the Affordable Care Act. So even the employment-based insurance that's sort of been a bedrock of the way we've built our economy over the last century or so, even that is going away for a great many people.
We're certainly going to see another round of cancellation notices next fall. Over time, employers are going to reevaluate whether they want to be in the health insurance business at all. The CBO is projecting that 6 to 8 million workers are going to find out their employers decided no. I think the number's going to be bigger, quite frankly. There's an enormous amount of money sitting on the table. Employers are going to send their employees off to collect it and go to these exchanges. The employees are going to go get insurance that they could get in the exchanges instead of at work. And the only one who loses is the taxpayer.
Yeah.
This was a budget report that says we have $8 trillion in new deficits over the next 10 years. It could be substantially larger.
The Affordable Care Act essentially subsidizes health care for the very poor in this country, right?
Yes, it does.
But as they make more money, as they learn new skills, get some education, get more of an income, those subsidies go away. And part of what this report is saying is that some people will just find it better to stay on the lower rungs of the economic ladder and continue to get health care coverage subsidized.
It's saying that, and it's actually making a very important point about tax policy. Essentially, when these workers attempt to move up and lose benefits, they're being taxed for their success. What the CBO is saying is these taxes matter. And we've heard an administration say again and again, you can tax the rich, you can tax people, it doesn't affect anything. This is a report that powerfully says it affects the incentive to work and affects the economic growth. That's a story people need to understand.
Well, it's the story that everybody's talking about right now. Douglas Holtz-Eakin, a former director of the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. Doug, thank you.
Thank you.